Hello everyone, welcome back to the Waste World podcast. My name is Gage Edwards, back with you again to bring you another awesome episode and an awesome guest to talk about some awesome things from the industry. Today, our episode is about something a little different, but still pertains to the waste industry and all of these facilities that kind of need some help being secure online. Today we're talking a little bit of how artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, critical infrastructure, specifically in the water and wastewater sector, how you are at risk and how people are going to prey on you and your customers. As utilities begin to adopt more advanced digital tools for improving monitoring, efficiency, predictive maintenance, new opportunities emerge to strengthen operations and sustainability. With that, those innovations are introducing new risks that organizations need to be prepared to address, which is what we're talking about today. Cybersecurity threats. They target utilities and they're becoming more sophisticated. And many organizations are still catching up when it comes to foundational protections. Stop clicking on suspicious emails. Phishing is still at large. Impersonation, still at large. If you get a phone call and it's from you, it's probably not a good thing. You probably don't want to answer it. That's kind of what we're getting into today. It's getting into being secure at your facility, making sure your customers' information is secure, and how to manage public trust in the face of a cybersecurity snafu. So to break this down, I brought on a great guest today, so you'll be hearing that now. So enjoy the episode, and remember, if you like it, subscribe on Spotify, Apple iTunes, podcasts, YouTube, wherever you're listening and watching. Visit waste360.com for more episodes. Share this episode with a friend, and enjoy. Hopefully you learn something. And hey, be secure out there. Watch your back. Today joining me is Brian Westnedge. Brian leads tech alliances and strategic partnerships for RedSift and brings home more than 20 years of experience in email deliverability, authentication, and cybersecurity. He's been deeply involved in the evolution of DMARC and BIMI standards and works with organizations to strengthen their digital trust infrastructure. Brian, welcome to the show. How are you? Thanks for being here.
Hey, I'm great, Gage. Great to be with you and your listeners today.
Excellent. Well, before we jump in and kind of have the bulk of our conversation, I'd like our listeners to get a better introduction to you. Can you quickly give a rundown on who you are, what you do, and maybe your experience in the space?
Absolutely. So I look after strategic alliances and technical partnerships for RedSift. We're a cybersecurity company, and we help companies protect their domains, brands, and infrastructure from attacks. Like you aptly described in your opening, I've been working in email and email security for over 2 decades now. Email has been around forever, as we all know, but I would say sometimes still gets taken for granted and is still, for most companies we work with, their biggest attack vector. Even though it's not necessarily the most sexiest attack vector, it still causes a ton of damage for companies, and the costs associated with the cleanup can be significant for most companies.
Yeah. Now, I guess my first question, Brian, just thinking off the top of my head, how old is your oldest email account that you still use?
Oh, that's great. Definitely an old Yahoo account that's probably 25 years old. There's probably an old AOL account that's been closed by now. I don't know. When I was in college, I had to get sponsored by a university professor to get an email account.
Wow.
So I had an old university account that was probably like 35 years ago that I do not have access to. But yeah, I used to have to pay the university to have an email account. So yeah, definitely goes back a long ways to some networks called Pine. And anyway, really, really old stuff. But email's great. It's an easy way for us to communicate with one another, but it's also fairly easily infiltrated and used for attacks. So we can talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah, Brian, I am 35 years old. Like that.
Well, that doesn't make me feel old at all.
I was just thinking, it's like my oldest email account's probably from like 2002.
Oh, I know,
like,
right?
Well, how about 35 years?
And It's got to be Gmail, right? I mean, that's like even me having a Yahoo account shows my
Mine's
age.
an old MSN account. Our first
All
game
right,
was
that makes me feel
literally
slightly
had,
better.
yeah. So I remember the old, and I still use it for things. My Microsoft account's like, hey, you still have this one. Let's log in. Okay, let's not make feel anyone worse about today. All right, let's start. So broadly talking about a little bit from where I'm from, where you're from, AI. How is AI transforming waste and wastewater utilities as we know
I think from a positive perspective, it's certainly enables better and more real-time monitoring, certainly predictive maintenance. I think fair to say reduced energy waste. In general, the goals of I think probably a lot of folks listening would be to improve the safety, efficiency, and kind of community resilience of their systems. I think all of that is possible with AI on the positive side, but on the negative side, it's I would say AI for attackers, if you will, is a lot easier to implement these days. And generally speaking, for a few different reasons, I think in the past, AI, the barriers to entry. Sorry, generally the barriers to entry for a cybersecurity attack were kind of cost, kind of technical knowledge, and maybe depending on where you're located, knowledge of the English language. And now with AI, I think those barriers to entry have been removed from attacks on the more negative side. So kind of always an escalating arm race. Companies are looking to use AI for efficiency and cybersecurity protection, and the bad guys are always using AI to kind of do the opposite and try to infiltrate organizations.
as we see this rise in AI, are we seeing a rise in cybersecurity issues with hackers and things? Are they becoming more prevalent because the tools are easier for people to get a hold of?
Easier to get a hold of. I would say don't require a lot of technical expertise.
Hmm.
Even before kind of the Claudes and the Chat GPTs, there were still like online forums you could at least in my space you could go in and spoof an email domain. So I could pretend to be from Gage's domain or Waste Company domain fairly easily just using forms and tools available on the internet. And now with the advent of AI and using generative AI tools, it's a lot easier to obviously craft your messages. You can use a free subscription. You don't even have to have a paid subscription to some of these tools to craft things. Don't need to know a lot about email infrastructure or how it works, or even care about it, because you can just execute commands that your AI agent will go execute for you. So yeah, I think we will see we will not see a lessening in cybersecurity attacks thanks to AI. We will probably see an increase, but it's not all bad news. AI tools will be available to the defenders as well. So it'll always be like the attackers will use some new tactic through AI, and the defenders will adapt, and AI will help them adapt, and then they'll defend themselves against that particular vulnerability, and we'll just unfortunately, we'll just kind of keep going back and forth, which is kind of the way it's always been, even without
Hmm.
AI.
Yeah, I think it just in my world, I still get spam emails that try and get me to say stuff or do stuff, and about every once in a while, I get a phone call from me
Ah,
where I'm like, this is
oh,
the most confusing thing. I know I shouldn't answer this, but what if
always
I'm in there?
intriguing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the spoofing of your own phone number, that's always a little bit of a
Yeah.
wake up call. I think, what's scary to me is I recently saw a demonstration of a real time video fake where the presenter took a picture of someone from the audience, like melded it with themselves, and were talking. It was in real time, so it was like it was kind of disturbing, because you think about like video fakes is kind of being something that's recorded and posted, rather than being something that's real time. So that was just like, I mean, that was just like blowing me away. They were obviously creating a completely fake persona using existing picture, but they could have used a real, face and real time kind of video spoofing, if you will. And that was just like, oh my gosh, that blew me away. So we're about to roll into the age where, it's going to be really hard to trust, voices on the other end of the phone, or even videos that we're getting in real time. I always encourage, this is totally low tech, but like with my own family, because they always ask me, because they think I'm the, cybersecurity expert, is like, hey, let's have a family password that only somebody in our family would know if you ask somebody on the other line that's purporting to be your folks or your kids or what have you. So anyway, something to keep in kind of the listeners' back pocket for dealing with their own kind of family issues, not anything outside of their organizational issues.
Yeah, it's almost, and I will get back on topic here in a second, but it just makes me think of movies where like, oh, there's two of that character. I have a gun. I can
Oh,
shoot one of them. Say something only I would know. Like that's a real
yes,
situation we have now. Like that's just something we.
totally. And like, I mean, anything that can be, personally available about you, available on the internet, you can assume that's just been, searched and indexed and available. This interview sometime it will be search and index, and somebody come back to me and say, hey, you talked to Gage back in, March of 2026, about this topic. But it's just like th- there's very little that's um uh, publicly available that won't be known. So keep something private, either within your own companies or obviously within your families, just to protect yourselves.
Yeah. Well, now they know too much. Now that they know you have a family password. So
Yeah, right.
somebody's gonna
Now,
come
now
call.
they're like, hey, we have our family password, and then they'll just guess it. Yeah, based on what they know about being publicly. That's really sad, but you're right.
Oh no! All right, let's get back on topic here. All right, so Redsift recently analyzed the water sector and found that more than half the U.S. water organizations lack proper email authentication properties protections. I will promise I get through that next time.
Yeah.
What does this mean in practical terms?
Yeah, so we took a look at 300 companies in the U.S. Water and waste sector and looked in particular for an email authentication protocol they mentioned at the top of the show called DMARC. So there's existing email authentication protocols that have been around, almost as long as email's been around. There's something called SPF, and not a sunscreen, but actually something called uh, Sender Policy Framework. It's a way for the mail server that sends a message to authenticate itself. And then there's something called DKIM, DKIM, which is it's a way to kind of cryptographically sign your email message to show the recipient mail server that it hasn't been altered in transit to add, let's say, a malicious URL or malicious attachment. So those two protocols, SPF and DKIM, both have been around over 20 years. And then DMARC is kind of the most modern email authentication protocol. Been around, I think, 14 years is as long as it's been around. I've been working in the space since it started. So DMARC is the modern email authentication protocol. The reason we could do a study of companies is the records themselves for these email authentication protocols exist in public DNS. So anybody can go and look up for a particular company and see what they're doing around this authentication protocol. So people with kind of generally good intents in mind or research purposes in mind, like us, we can say, hey, this company has protections in place based on what we can see in public DNS. But the converse to that is attackers can easily look up and say, oh, this company is unprotected. I'm going to go after them, probably more likely than I am going to go after a company that is already protected. So these are signals, I guess, if you will, that we see in DNS. And from our study, we noticed that a little over half of the 300 companies we analyzed are unprotected from spoofing, which means me, as much as attacker, could send an email as their domain, either internally to the company's network or potentially externally to customers, partners in the supply chain. So it's really a vulnerability. And again, because of the age of email that we talked about, I think email just gets taken for granted, and people are like, hey, this is a solved problem. It's been around forever. I use Microsoft Office 365 or I use Google Workspace. I'm good. And the reality is, you're actually not good unless you implement some of these email authentication protocols.
Now, I think what I find is interesting. I attended a wastewater show, like I was saying, 2 weeks ago, and then last year's when I kind of first heard about this, and I think it surprised me.
Yeah.
Why wastewater utilities? Why water? What is it? Is it because they do lag so far behind when it comes to adopting like these DMARCs and other email protections? It's because they're a trusted commodity that we just kind of like go, oh, that's just my water company, or is it like more movie villain type stuff than that? Like we want to turn off waters of the whole country. Like what? Why
Yeah.
water?
Well, yeah, that's great. Great point. I think a little bit of all of the above. There's hackers with kind of financial incentives in mind, like, hey, can we get access to the network? And maybe they think, hey, this particular vertical market has less protection or is not as focused on email attacks as maybe like financial services, of course, or kind of retail, travel, and hospitality. So the financial motivation is always there. Certainly there's nation state actors that wish us harm, and obviously we can talk about what's going on in the world right now in Iran. But back at the end of 2024, CISA released an advisory telling you know waste and water companies to be vigilant against attacks from Iran. I went back and looked before our call today, and just to make sure that CISA hadn't released anything recently, and they haven't. But I wouldn't be surprised if in the next few weeks, at the time of the listeners listening to this podcast, that there'll be some new advisories about protecting yourselves. But yeah, definitely, can always be a financial motivation, whether it's exfiltrating data or financial information, personal information. And then finally, obviously, just attacking critical infrastructure of the US is always kind of a goal of our adversaries, whether they are nation states or just organized, criminal organizations.
Yeah, and I guess touching on that, the Iran stuff a little bit. So much going on in the world. There's potential for
Oh,
cyber threats all the time. When we think about critical infrastructure industries, like what do they need to do to think about enhancing their systems to prevent intrusion? I guess having something in place yesterday was a good idea, but like when's the next
always,
best
right?
time?
Yeah, the next best time is is
Today.
is obviously right now, right? And from an email perspective, I would say it's very easy if you work within an organization and you're just curious what your current domain posture is. If you go to our own website, just to toot our own horn, or you can go to a few others, but redsift.com, redsift.com, you can plug in your domain and get a report of whether or not it's protected. And what we'll do is look for things like these email authentication protocols, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, and we'll just be able to tell you, hey, this domain is either protected or it's unprotected. So that's an easy way for a company, just even if you don't do anything with emails, for you, if you're just in a broader IT role or cybersecurity role, you can go in and see what's our current posture relating to email authentication. So a lot of companies, I think, will probably be looking, if they're not already, do some sort of potentially, pen testing on a regular basis, where they, have their systems assessed from somebody that would use tactics like an attacker. That's going to be fairly regular occurrence. If you're applying for something like cybersecurity insurance, usually you're going to be during the vetting process. Your systems are going to be assessed, and you might get a report from that. If you're looking to adopt industry standards like ISO 27001 or SOC 2 Type 2, certainly you'd be going through audit processes that would reveal vulnerabilities. But email is kind of my area of expertise, and it's really easy to figure out what you're doing. So yeah, redsift.com, or there's tools on like mxtoolbox.com, with fairly common IT tools that will give you an assessment. Or you can just Google domain security, and you'll get a list of common sites to check your current status. But email is just, again, it's actually an easier hole to plug, I would say, than some vulnerabilities. That if you're looking at your network infrastructure and firewalls and kind of really intensive long-term projects, the email authentication project doesn't have to take a lot of time, doesn't necessarily have to take a lot of investment. It really is more awareness that there might be an issue. And again, I think a lot of people are unaware of an email vulnerability until they have an attack, until somebody sends money out of the organization or data is exfilled. I think it just gets taken for granted. So be proactive. At the very least, if email isn't your thing, ask your email admin internally who administers your Microsoft M365 environment or Google Workspace or whatever type of email gateway you use, just ask them, hey, are we protected from spoofing attacks that might not even come inbound to our organization, but are targeting our customers and our supply chain? They should be able to give you an answer on that.
Hmm. Do you still get your own spoofing attacks sent to you
Ah,
that you're kind of like, look at these guys, check, stop
always,
trying.
but it's funny you say that. It used to be a lot easier to just look at an email and be like,
Hmm.
that's pretty skeezy, right? It could be misspellings, could be, potentially, just grammar, or just kind of the ask was something just ridiculous, right? We probably all remember, you've inherited a sum of money, or somebody
Oh
else
yeah.
has inherited a sum of money they want to share with you. Those are like less popular today. I wouldn't say if you go into like your Gmail spam folder, you'll see them still, but the harder attacks I think are the ones potentially probably crafted with AI, no spelling mistakes, no grammar mistakes, potentially, English as a first language, maybe no links and no attachments kind of to set off your radar. Because a lot of times we
Hmm.
see links and we see an attachment and we kind of, over time, because we've done security awareness training, or, we just been around a while and we're more skeptical, but if a message itself doesn't have any links or attachments, it might just say, hey, Gage, this is Brian. Just following up, on our conversation. Maybe can we chat offline, or could we move this to Signal, or something more secure? Or, in commercial industries, like, be like, hey, this is the CEO. Hey, finance manager, I need you to do a wire for me. You can't reach me, but this is super important. I have a deal going on. Can you send a wire to this address? Or, hey, can you reply to this email with, last year's W-2s, because we're going through an audit, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, those alarm bells, I think, that used to be set off just from looking at a message are much less prevalent these days. And I mean, I think it's fair to treat most email messages you get with kind of a fair amount of healthy skepticism. And it's hard because your listeners, you, me, we all get a ton of email, right? We're skimming our email, we're reading it on our phones, we maybe just kind of paying half attention to it, and really, um, I think if you're reading your corporate email and your company hasn't protected itself against kind of email impersonation and spoofing, you could find yourself, in a real bind. And hopefully it'll be just a security awareness test, because a lot of companies we work with, and especially in water and waste, they do security awareness tests regularly, where they flag, if you failed, and then they'll, send you to remedial training, or you'll have to watch a video, or do something. Certainly that is prevalent. So sometimes you'll get some of those kind of fake spoofing attacks, but obviously the real kind of devastating ones are the you know the actual real phishing attempts that are spoofing your own domain. And I think a lot of us if we look at an email and it's coming from either our corporate domain, or maybe a personal domain, we have more of a tendency to trust a message than if somebody's using some random lookalike domain, or completely, nonsense domain related to the company. I think a lot of us can kind of filter that out. But again, a lot of times we're reading email really fast and we may not be paying attention. And there are a lot of email clients that actually suppress the from domain, so you never even see it. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I'm painting a really kind of doom and gloom type picture here. But I think the good news for listeners who are in this space is, hey, email authentication in particular is fairly straightforward to implement. There's benefits to implementing email authentication in terms of getting your legitimate mail delivered as well, which we can talk about, and then rewards, which are things like the BIMI standard. So definitely, there's kind of a two-pronged benefit of implementing email authentication protections. One is better chance of your legitimate mail being delivered when it's authenticated properly, and then obviously stopping the spoofing of your domain.
Yeah, I feel like with me emails, again, I do read them quickly. If I know they're a trusted source, I'm in there constantly. I do
Yep.
see the ones that are spoofed. They're like that is, oh, it's this company, or it's your friend and your phone, your contact. My mom even gets. I see stuff
Oh
from
yeah.
her. But then I put on. I'm like a bar, like a bouncer at a bar, where I'm like, I got to check your ID.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
check your email, where it's coming from. Check that it's where it's being sent to. All these things. Like I'm looking just for the littlest things that lets me know that this is not real. Half the time, it's not real.
Yep. Yep. That's a great analogy. I've used that bouncer analogy many times, and that's it. But instead of a person doing it, the bouncer in this case is kind of the email gateway that's checking for those ID
Mhm.
indicators, which are SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. But yeah, the bouncer analogy is perfectly apt.
Now, let's say a company has fallen victim to a phishing attempt
Yep.
or a something, and like now we're seeing emails go out to their customers and things. So what happens to the public trust if a utility
Yeah.
experiences a phishing attempt
Yeah, I
or
think it's been a while since I've seen actual stats on this. On the commercial side of things, I remember maybe it was around if you remember, one of the original big data breaches of a U.S. commercial organization was Target several years ago. They had a big data breach. It was like their point of sale systems were breached, and then I think somebody got in through like their HVAC contractor. I mean, it's a crazy story, but I think Target ended up taking like hundreds of millions of dollars in losses related to that incident because it was number one, yes, certainly trust was shaken in the company. There were, sales went down. There were costs involved with recovery from the cyber attack. So all the mitigation Target had to do, in terms of getting somebody from a forensics analysis to go in and find what happened, and then mitigating all the things that the forensics company found. So yeah, the breach of public trust, I think. I mean, we could probably find stats, but just inherently, I think all of us are less likely to trust an email from an organization that has had an issue. If we've seen phishing attacks, things that we've identified ourselves as phishing coming from a domain, we're going to be less likely to trust the authentic mail from that domain. So there's definitely, I think your trust can be shaken when there's some sort of incident. And I think we're all on, like, for a long time, I didn't really trust email from Target, and the same thing goes for anything. Maybe I won't trust U.S. government email for a while after kind of some of the fallout from the Iran situation happens, or maybe maybe if my local water utility here in Boulder, Colorado, gets spoofed, I'm not going to be as likely to take action on the invoice I get, every month. So the erosion of trust, I think, is a real thing, and over time, if you just see continuous spoofing attempts on a domain, you're going to be less likely to trust the real stuff. And I think a lot of us, you don't see it as much anymore because financial services companies have really, they're probably the most well protected vertical you can find. But, a lot of us would get fake bank statements, obviously, fake credit card statements, from Amex and Visa and things. And those companies have now protected themselves, not to say that you won't get an email purporting to be those companies, but most of them have implemented email authentication protocols. So their real domains can't be impersonated. So yeah, I would say if you've had some sort of incident, you should look at implementing email authentication measures as quickly as you can, just to kind of shore up that public trust, and even to protect employees.
yeah, and the public trust thing. I still get updates from like I think CreditWise where they're like, "Hey,
Yeah,
this person had a data breach and you were a part of it." I'm like, "Sweet, cool,
yeah, yeah.
love
You
that."
have credit monitoring for like the rest of your natural lifetime,
Yeah,
pretty
let me
much.
just freeze everything. So anytime I want to do
Yeah.
something, I have to get a phone call. Yeah, but at least I know I'm protected. They're calling me like, "Are you
Yes.
so and so?" Yes, I am. Okay, cool. Here we go. All right.
Yeah.
So companies listening to this podcast right now that want to that realize they maybe don't have a strong enough email authentication in place. What are those practical first steps they should take, or what should they be doing as soon as they're done listening to this
Yeah.
podcast? Is it getting involved in the
Absolutely.
DMARC stuff, or what?
Yeah, so DMARC, I would say, is a great way to start, because it will give you visibility into who is using your domain for email, both legitimately and maliciously. So you, as the domain owner, can implement DMARC, and DMARC is a public um, publicly available specification, by the way. You don't have to use any particular vendor to implement it like Redshift. You can actually implement DMARC on your own without any third party help. And what you'll do is you'll get these DMARC reports about your domain. Those reports will tell you, here's who we see sending email as your domain. And then you, as the domainer, will kind of figure out, well, it says this IP address is sending as me. And this host name is spending as me. Is that my Salesforce instance? Is that my, is that my HR tool like Workday? Is it some sort of marketing automation platform, some sort of marketing cloud? Is it my corporate email, Office 365? So you as a domain owner will get reporting and visibility into how your domain is being used for email. Once you have that visibility, the idea is that you authenticate all of the good email the company sends. And then once you authenticate all the good stuff, you publish a policy in your DNS that tells receiving email gateways, hey, just reject a message if you get an email from my domain, but it doesn't authenticate properly. So it's almost, in your listeners may be kind of worn out from the term, but DMARC is almost a zero trust solution for email security, and that anything that isn't inherently authenticated and identified can be blocked by default. So the challenge for implementation as your company gets larger is you don't ever want to be in a position where you accidentally block legitimate mail that doesn't authenticate properly. So it's a very binary. I think it's a very binary. Not very binary. It's a binary situation with DMARC in that a message either authenticates properly or it doesn't. So it's not a black box like a lot of things in security, which can wear a lot of folks out, where they have to trust some box that tells them something is good or bad. Email authentication is not that. Email is really, there are indicators. If you look at a message header, which obviously most of our audience will not ever look at an email header unless they're a true email geek, but there are indicators in email header whether or not the message passed SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. Now email is binary, so definitely once you have the visibility into who's using your domain, you'll authenticate all your good email. You'll probably see some of the spoofing attacks as well. The great thing is you don't have to do anything about them. Once you get to DMARC enforcement is what it's called, which is a DMARC policy of quarantine and reject. All of the bad stuff sent either inbound to your organization as your own domain or outbound, if you will, to your customers and your partners in your supply chain. That will get blocked. Then you can focus on other things that are important in your organization and other priorities. It's not necessarily a set it and forget it protocol, because a lot of organizations are always onboarding new cloud services that send email, and they're offboarding other services at the same time. But DMARC can kind of light up who's using your domain. You can light up shadow IT, or you can light up systems that send email that everyone's aware of, but just maybe don't authenticate properly. So get a DMARC record in place with a policy of none, which means no action is taken on a message that fails authentication. Just get that visibility. And from there, you can decide, hey, what is the stuff I want to authenticate and authorize? And then you can block everything else. So a pretty straightforward proposition in a cybersecurity world that a lot of times is various shades of gray.
Gotcha. Well said. So hopefully people take that advice to heart and they get it done. Right. So Brian, that is the end of my questions there. Anything we didn't cover today that you think is prevalent to our conversation?
I would just say, hey, again, I'm talking a bit of doom and gloom, but a lot of organizations that I've worked with, regardless of size, email authentication, DMARC enforcement is something that you can get in place in a matter of weeks, not months. So if you're using the right tooling and you kind of make it a priority within your organization, even if you're not under attack, you said earlier, like, when's the best time to start? The best time to start is before you have an attack. So think of email authentication as maybe insurance against future attacks. And if you want more information on it, our website at redshift.com has a wealth of information and free information as well about how to just get started with email authentication.
Brian, how many emails do you think you have unread right now?
Yeah. After our talk, I would say, over 100.
Okay. All right. I'm looking at
So
my phone.
you're probably in the same way.
Mine says 155,000.
Oh, there you go. Oh, well, yes. Okay. Well, I am a bit of an inbox zero kind of
Me,
OCD person, which is terrible.
I let them ride. I'm just like, I'm not getting to you. That's gonna sit there on red forever.
I think
All right.
probably for mental health ish, just kind of your way is probably better than mine.
Sure. Yeah, I just don't have the time. I don't want to commit to it. All right, Brian, you already mentioned redsift.com. Any other places people can get information?
Sure. For DMARC itself, since it is an open protocol, you can go to dmarc.org, dmarc.org, and there's a ton of other general information about the protocol and spec that can be useful as well.
Awesome. Well, Brian, I appreciate you for hanging out with me today and explaining this to me and our listeners. Hopefully everybody is more secure after this conversation. Hopefully this kind of puts the light bulb up for them. But I appreciate it, Brian. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gage.
All right, that wraps it up for this episode of the Waste World podcast. Thank you again to Brian for joining me to discuss the fears of the world in cybersecurity that still exists today. It's 2026 and people are still getting duped on their emails. So be careful out there. Put in protections. Put protections in place for you and your customers. AI is getting big. They're getting stronger. You need to get stronger too. Okay, that's the episode. I won't keep you too long. Remember, subscribe on Spotify, Apple iTunes, YouTube, other podcasting services, wherever you're listening. Subscribe, leave a review, rate the show, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. If you don't like something, put it in a nice way. I don't know. Tell a friend about the show. And like I said before, if you don't, I'll tell my friends about you. And that's going to get weird quick because you're going to have no idea. And someone out there is just going to think, wow, what a weird person that is. Yeah, we're going weird with it. Okay, that's the show. Remember, it's our world. Let's not waste it.
3, 2, 1.